The rain was falling quietly that morning. Sarah stood outside the big glass building, holding a mop and a small cleaning bucket. Her shoes were old and cracked. Her jeans were too loose, and her hoodie had a tear near the sleeve. No one looked at her as she entered through the side door. She was just the janitor, and that meant, to most people inside, she was invisible. Sarah's first day at the company began at 6 a.m. The hallways were still quiet, but a few early employees walked past her. Some gave her a quick look, then looked away. One man didn't even bother. He almost ran into her and just said, "Watch it," without even stopping. Sarah didn't reply. She just nodded, stepped aside, and kept walking. Her cleaning cart squeaked a little as she pushed it across the hallway. She noticed everything: the way people walked, the tone in their voices, the way their eyes shifted when they lied. She saw a man walk into the office kitchen, take 2 sodas from the fridge and whisper, "They won't notice." He wasn't wearing a name tag. Sarah made a mental note. She didn't write anything down. Not yet. She remembered faces. She remembered behavior. And she remembered kindness too. Later that morning, she entered a big meeting room to clean. A group of young interns were joking loudly. One of them looked at her and laughed. "Hey, maybe she can join our team meeting. She looks like she knows how to scrub a plant clean." Everyone laughed. Sarah smiled softly, but said nothing. They saw a poor, quiet girl, but inside, she was calm and deeply focused. Sarah cleaned slowly and carefully. She picked up trash without complaint. She emptied bins full of shredded paper. She wiped whiteboards with leftover company plans still faintly written on them. No one stopped her. No one cared what she saw. She went to the main office area where rows of desks lined the floor. People were typing, sipping coffee, or scrolling their phones. A man in a suit walked by and said loudly, "Don't forget the bathroom floors. They're dirty like your clothes." Some people laughed. Others stayed silent. No one stood up for her. Sarah didn't flinch. She looked down, nodded, and walked away. She cleaned the bathroom like nothing had happened, but her mind was awake. Her eyes were open. In the lunchroom, she helped an older lady who had dropped her tray. The woman smiled. "Thank you, dear. You're very kind." Sarah smiled back. Kindness is rare here, she thought. As the day passed, she started to understand the company better. The workers at the top floors rarely smiled. The middle managers spoke politely only to their seniors. And the ones at the bottom, the guards, the receptionists, the drivers, they were the kindest. They smiled. They said thank you. Some even asked her how her day was going. Sarah noticed every name tag, every desk, every word. In the break room, a group of workers were talking about the CEO. One of them said, "I heard his daughter is studying abroad. Lucky girl, she'll never have to clean toilets like that girl." Sarah was mopping just a few feet away. They didn't even lower their voices. At one point, a man stormed out of his office, holding a stack of papers. He was angry. His voice echoed, "I told you these reports are wrong." He shouted to someone behind him. Then, without looking, he threw the papers to the floor, right in front of Sarah. "Clean that up too," he said coldly. Sarah bent down slowly, picked up the papers one by one, and placed them on her cart. Her hands moved calmly, but her heart was heavy. She looked up briefly and saw his nameplate on the office door, Mr. D. Harris, Finance Director. She memorized it. No one knew who she really was. No one knew the truth behind her silence. They saw a poor girl cleaning their mess, but they didn't know the storm she carried inside. She wasn't just watching the dirt on the floor. She was watching the dirt in their hearts. As the sun started to set, Sarah stood near the elevator, waiting to return her cart. A junior employee brushed past her, accidentally knocking over her bucket. Water spilled onto the floor. He didn't say sorry. He didn't even stop. Sarah slowly cleaned it again. At that moment, a voice spoke gently from behind. "You've had a long day. said the security guard. She nodded and smiled. It's okay. He looked at her with kind eyes and said, You're not like the others. You actually see people. Sarah's smile faded just a little. She whispered, And they don't see me. As she walked away down the hall, dragging her mop slowly behind her, she passed the finance director's office once more. The door was closed. She paused and looked at it. One man even threw papers at her feet, the narrator's voice would say in the video, not knowing she owned the chair he sat on. And with that, the screen would fade to black. The next morning, Sarah arrived even earlier than before. The sun had not yet risen, and the air was still. She wore the same old hoodie, the same cracked shoes. Her hair was tied back in a loose bun. She looked tired, but her eyes were sharp, like someone searching for something hidden. The building was quiet as she entered through the side door again. Sarah pushed her cleaning cart through the empty hallway. But this time, something small and black was inside her pocket. A tiny camera, no bigger than her thumb. She had brought it from home the night before. It was simple, cheap, but it could see and record everything. She had made a decision. If they lie in front of me, she whispered to herself, let the truth speak behind them. By 7 a.m., the office started to come alive. The sound of shoes clicking on the floor, coffee cups clinking, laughter, fake and forced. A few people walked past her again, ignoring her like she was furniture. She quietly stepped into the main meeting room. She began dusting the table. No one noticed as she gently placed the small camera on the bookshelf in the corner. It looked like part of the design, unnoticeable, forgotten, but it had the perfect view of the room. Just in time. Minutes later, a group of mid-level managers walked in. They didn't notice Sarah still cleaning in the corner. They were loud. They laughed about the CEO behind his back. I'm telling you, the old man has lost his mind, one of them said. He's barely in the office anymore. Another added, well, why would he care? His daughter's going to take over soon anyway. I heard she's some spoiled brat. Private school, private jets, no idea what real work looks like. Sarah's hands paused. She stood silently, wiping the edge of the table, her back turned to them. Her eyes looked down, but her mind was racing. They were talking about her, right in front of her, and they didn't even know. One of the men glanced at her and whispered, Do you think she hears us? Who cares? The other said, She's just the janitor. Sarah felt something burn in her chest. Not anger, but something colder, something that made her stronger. She finished cleaning the room quietly. As she turned to leave, one of the managers knocked over his coffee cup on purpose. The dark liquid spilled across the floor. Oops, he said loudly. Can you clean this up, sweetheart? Sarah stared at the floor, then at the coffee slowly spreading toward the table leg. She nodded once, knelt down, and began to clean without a word. The manager laughed. Good girl. The others chuckled and left the room. But the camera kept recording. Later that day, Sarah walked to the staff break room. It smelled of burnt toast and old coffee. A few interns were gathered around the counter, laughing again. One of them pointed to a screen showing company charts. We're all just numbers here, he said. Well, except the rich kids who will run this place one day. Sarah stood near the sink, wiping the counter quietly. One of them saw her and said, Hey, you missed a spot over here. He smirked. She walked over, cleaned the table, and didn't look up. They had no idea who she was, and that was her power. When she went to empty the trash bins, she stopped at the desk of the receptionist, Maya. Maya had always smiled at her, always said hello. Rough day? Maya asked softly. Sarah nodded. Some people talk too much. Maya chuckled. They don't think anyone is listening. Sarah smiled back, a real smile this time. Before the day ended, she went back to the meeting room and picked up the hidden camera. She tucked it back into her pocket. No one saw. No one suspected. That night, in her small apartment, she sat on her bed and watched the footage. Every word, every laugh, every insult. She took notes. Names, faces, words spoken when no one was supposed to be watching. She stopped the video at the part where the man spilled the coffee and called her sweetheart. She stared at the screen. Then she wrote down his name, Daniel Ross. At the top of the page, she wrote just one sentence. They don't see me, but I see them all. The next morning, she sent a short message to a private number. Camera worked. They're worse than we thought. A reply came moments later. Continue. Don't reveal anything yet. Soon. Sarah turned off her phone, put on her hoodie again, and walked out the door. The janitor was returning to work. But this time, she was hunting. The morning started with fake smiles. People entered the office building with perfect hair, shiny shoes, and forced greetings. They smiled at the bosses. They smiled at each other. But no one smiled at the janitor girl with the tired eyes and broken shoes. Sarah pushed her cleaning cart through the lobby. She had memorized most faces by now. She knew who smiled with kindness and who smiled like a knife. At the elevator, a young woman dropped her files. Pages scattered everywhere. Sarah bent down to help her. But the woman snapped. "Don't touch that. You'll make it dirty." Sarah paused. She stood up slowly and moved away. The woman gathered her papers without a thank you. The elevator doors closed. Sarah didn't say a word, but in her mind, she added another name to her growing list. She cleaned the lobby while the receptionist, Maya, talked kindly to everyone who passed. Maya was one of the few who treated Sarah like a human being. "Morning," Maya said with a warm smile. Sarah nodded. "You're always nice to me." "Why?" Maya laughed. "Because I don't need a name tag to know what respect looks like." Sarah looked down, hiding the small smile on her face. That morning, something new caught her eye. The company was preparing for a visit from the board of directors. Everyone was rushing, cleaning their desks, fixing their clothes, practicing their fake laughs. People who never cared before were suddenly polite to each other. But no one noticed the janitor girl walking between them, listening, watching. She entered a conference room on the top floor. It wasn't her usual area, but today she had a reason. Inside, the chief operating officer, Ms. Regina Dale, was speaking to a team of managers. Her voice was cold and sharp. "I want this visit to be perfect. No mistakes, no delays, no excuses." Sarah silently dusted the bookshelf in the corner. A manager raised his hand. "Ma'am, what if the CEO's daughter shows up?" Ms. Regina rolled her eyes. "That spoiled brat. She won't show. She's too busy pretending to care from some faraway campus. We run this company now." Sarah didn't move. Another manager said, "I heard she dropped out of school." Regina laughed. "Wouldn't surprise me. She's probably working as a barista somewhere." Everyone laughed. Sarah clenched the cloth in her hand. She turned around slowly. No one even noticed. To them, she was just background noise, another shadow in the corner. After they left, Sarah stood alone in that room. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass table. She whispered, "You run this company." She opened her cleaning bag, took out a second hidden camera, and gently placed it behind a flower vase on the table. Let's see who really runs it. That afternoon, she walked past the finance office. Daniel Ross, the man who had thrown papers at her feet, was on a call. "Yes, I moved the numbers. Relax. No one will notice," he said loudly. Sarah paused outside the door, pretending to clean the glass. "I've been handling this for months. If anyone checks too closely, I'll blame the interns or fire the new guy." He laughed. Sarah slowly moved away, her heart pounding. She went back to the supply room and wrote his name again. This time, she added a word beside it: fraud. The day felt heavier now. In the hallway, a kind old man who worked in the mailroom stopped her. "You look tired today," he said. Sarah nodded. "I'm just thinking a lot." He smiled. "Thinking is good. You see things we don't." She looked at him with soft eyes. "Yes, I see a lot." Before the day ended, a memo went out across the company. CEO returning this week. Panic spread like fire. Desks were cleaned. Reports were rechecked. Coffee machines were polished. Everyone started pretending again. Pretending to care, pretending to work hard. But Sarah, she was done pretending. She went home, uploaded the new camera footage to her private server, and watched. Lies. Manipulation. Insults. She watched as people who wore fancy suits acted like they owned the world, while stepping on everyone below them. But the truth was simple. They didn't know the janitor owned the building. She looked at her own reflection in the laptop screen. They saw a girl with a mop. But soon, they'd see her real face. She reached into her drawer and pulled out a small black box. Inside it was a silver name badge. She held it in her hands and stared at it. It read, "Sarah Elwood, Executive Director, Elwood Holdings." She closed the box. Not yet. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. The morning started with fake smiles. People entered the office building with perfect hair, shiny shoes, and forced greetings. They smiled at the bosses. They smiled at each other. But no one smiled at the janitor girl with the tired eyes and broken shoes. Sarah pushed her cleaning cart through the lobby. She had memorized most faces by now. She knew who smiled with kindness and who smiled like a knife. At the elevator, a young woman dropped her files. Pages scattered everywhere. Sarah bent down to help her. But the woman snapped, "Don't touch that. You'll make it dirty." Sarah paused. She stood up slowly and moved away. The woman gathered her papers without a thank you. The elevator doors closed. Sarah didn't say a word. But in her mind, she added another name to her growing list. She cleaned the lobby while the receptionist, Maya, talked kindly to everyone who passed. Maya was one of the few who treated Sarah like a human being. "Morning," Maya said with a warm smile. Sarah nodded. "You're always nice to me." "Why?" Maya laughed. "Because I don't need a name tag to know what respect looks like." Sarah looked down, hiding the small smile on her face. That morning, something new caught her eye. The company was preparing for a visit from the board of directors. Everyone was rushing, cleaning their desks, fixing their clothes, practicing their fake laughs. People who never cared before were suddenly polite to each other. But no one noticed the janitor girl walking between them, listening, watching. She entered a conference room on the top floor. It wasn't her usual area, but today, she had a reason. Inside, the chief operating officer, Ms. Regina Dale, was speaking to a team of managers. Her voice was cold and sharp. "I want this visit to be perfect. No mistakes. No delays. No excuses." Sarah silently dusted the bookshelf in the corner. A manager raised his hand. "Ma'am, what if the CEO's daughter shows up?" Ms. Regina rolled her eyes. "That spoiled brat. She won't show. She's too busy pretending to care from some faraway campus. We run this company now." Sarah didn't move. Another manager said, "I heard she dropped out of school." Regina laughed. "Wouldn't surprise me. She's probably working as a barista somewhere." Everyone laughed. Sarah clenched the cloth in her hand. She turned around slowly. No one even noticed. To them, she was just background noise. Another shadow in the corner. After they left, Sarah stood alone in that room. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass table. She whispered, "You run this company." She opened her cleaning bag, took out a second hidden camera, and gently placed it behind a flower vase on the table. "Let's see who really runs it." That afternoon, she walked past the finance office. Daniel Rose, the man who had thrown papers at her feet, was on a call. "Yes, I moved the numbers. Relax. No one will notice," he said loudly. Sarah paused outside the door, pretending to clean the glass. "I've been handling this for months. If anyone checks too closely, I'll blame the interns or fire the new guy." He laughed. Sarah slowly moved away, her heart pounding. She went back to the supply room and wrote his name again. This time, she added a word beside it: fraud. The day felt heavier now. In the hallway, a kind old man who worked in the mailroom stopped her. "You look tired today," he said. Sarah nodded. "I'm just thinking a lot." He smiled. "Thinking is good. You see things we don't." She looked at him with soft eyes. "Yes, I see a lot." Before the day ended, a memo went out across the company. "CEO returning this week." Panic spread like fire. Desks were cleaned. Reports were rechecked. Coffee machines were polished. Everyone started pretending again. Pretending to care, pretending to work hard. But Sarah, she was done pretending. She went home, uploaded the new camera footage to her private server, and watched. Lies. Manipulation. Insults. She watched as people who wore fancy suits acted like they owned the world, while stepping on everyone below them. But the truth was simple. They didn't know the janitor owned the building. She looked at her own reflection in the laptop screen. They saw a girl with a mop, but soon they'd see her real face. She reached into her drawer and pulled out a small black box. Inside it was a silver name badge. She held it in her hands and stared at it. It read, "Sarah Elwood, Executive Director, Elwood Holdings." She closed the box. Not yet. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. The office was louder than usual. People were walking faster, dressing sharper, and smiling wider. But their smiles didn't reach their eyes. Something had changed. A storm was coming, and everyone could feel it. The CEO was coming back. For weeks, no one had seen him. Rumors said he was sick. Others said he had retired quietly. Some thought he had given up. But now, a short message had arrived in every inbox. "Mr. Elwood will return tomorrow. All departments prepare." That one sentence shook the entire building. Sarah arrived early, as always. She wore her usual faded hoodie and loose jeans. Her shoes were still cracked at the edges. But her eyes were wide open and watching. She pushed her cleaning cart into the lobby and watched the madness unfold. Managers shouted orders. Interns ran around with coffee trays. Even the security guards were polishing their shoes. Everyone wanted to be seen. Everyone wanted to look good for the boss. But none of them looked at the girl with the mop. And that was their mistake. Sarah had spent days watching, listening, and recording. She knew every fake smile, every backroom deal, every stolen number. Now, the man who built this company, her father, was returning. She didn't text him, didn't call. He didn't know she had been working here for weeks. He didn't know the lies that had filled the hallways. Not yet. But soon he would. That afternoon, Sarah quietly entered the executive floor. She cleaned the glass walls and windows. No one stopped her. She passed Ms. Regina's office. The COO was on a call. "Yes, I've made the reports perfect. Everything will look clean on the surface. Mr. Elwood won't see what's underneath." Sarah paused. The door was slightly open. Regina continued, "If he asks about the board numbers, we'll say it was a system glitch. If he asks about his daughter, we say she's traveling." Sarah's heart beat harder. She stepped away. Downstairs, the security team was checking cameras and preparing guest badges. They didn't see Sarah slip into the server room. Inside, she placed one more flash drive into the computer. It copied every log from the last month. Video, emails, reports. She whispered, "Let's see what you all try to hide." The next day, it happened. Black cars rolled up to the building. Staff gathered at the entrance, fixing their hair, straightening their ties. Some even practiced fake laughter, just in case. Then the doors opened, and Mr. Jonathan Elwood walked in. He was tall, with silver hair and a calm face. He walked slowly like someone who didn't need to rush. His eyes scanned everything. Nothing escaped him. But one thing was missing. His daughter. "Where is Sarah?" he asked the first manager who greeted him. The man stuttered. "We believe she's traveling, sir. Out of the country." Mr. Elwood raised an eyebrow. "Is that so?" He walked past them. Sarah was watching from the hallway, hidden, but close. Her heart ached. Her father hadn't seen her in weeks. She missed him, but she wasn't ready. Not yet. She had a mission. Regina approached Mr. Elwood with a bright smile. "Welcome back, sir. We've kept everything running smoothly." Mr. Elwood nodded. "I'll see the numbers myself." As he moved, people followed him like shadows. They pointed to charts, spoke big words, made big promises, but Sarah knew they were lies. And so did he. His eyes didn't light up. They narrowed. In the break room, an intern spilled coffee and looked terrified. Sarah walked over and helped him clean up. "Thank you," he whispered. She smiled softly. Some people still care. She went back to the cleaning closet and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was a USB drive. She had labeled it in black ink, "For him." It held everything: video files, audio clips, records of fraud, and every word they had said about her and her father. Sarah stared at it for a long moment. Then she walked to her father's office. He wasn't there yet. She placed the envelope on his desk and disappeared. Hours later, Mr. Elwood returned to his office. He saw the envelope, opened it, and plugged in the drive. He watched in silence. At first, he didn't blink. Then his hands clenched. His daughter's face appeared on the screen, disguised in janitor clothes, listening, recording, learning. He leaned back in his chair, and for the first time that day, he smiled. A quiet, proud smile. "She saw the truth," he whispered. And she didn't run. His eyes filled with something close to fire. He pressed a button on his desk. "Call a company-wide meeting." Now, downstairs, Sarah stood in the shadows, waiting. Her time was near. She had cleaned their floors. Now she was going to clean the company. The announcement echoed through the office like thunder. "All staff to the main conference hall. Mr. Elwood has called an emergency meeting." No one knew why. Some thought it was a celebration. Some thought it was about promotions. Others whispered it might be bad news. But no one expected the truth. Sarah stood near the back of the crowd, wearing her janitor uniform as always. Her face was calm, but her heart beat fast. This was the moment. Mr. Elwood entered the conference hall slowly. His sharp eyes scanned the room. His expression was unreadable. He stepped up to the podium. The room fell silent. Behind him, a large screen turned on. For a long second, he didn't speak. He looked at the people who had once worked beside him, the people who thought he was gone forever. Then he said softly, "I've seen what this company has become." People looked at each other, confused. He raised the small USB drive in his hand. "This was left on my desk. It showed me things I never thought I'd see. Lies, theft, disrespect, cowardice." Whispers began to spread. Daniel Rose, the man from finance, shifted nervously. Regina Dale tightened her jaw. "I trusted this company to my team while I was away," Mr. Elwood said. "But it turns out, the only person I could trust was someone you all ignored." He paused. "She was watching while you laughed behind my back." He turned to the screen. Video clips began to play. First, Regina's voice. "That spoiled brat. She won't show. She's too busy pretending to care." Gasps filled the room. Next, Daniel's phone call. "I moved the numbers. No one will notice. I'll blame the interns." Managers froze. Some looked around for exits. Some tried to smile like nothing happened. Mr. Elwood turned to face them again. "You see, my daughter didn't run away. She came here in silence. As a janitor, eyes widened. People looked around, confused. Then Mr. Elwood raised his voice. "Sarah, come forward." The room turned. Sarah stepped out from the back slowly. People whispered. Some gasped. Maya, the kind receptionist, clapped her hand to her mouth in shock. Sarah walked straight, shoulders back, head high. She stopped beside her father. He looked at her with pride. "This is Sarah Elwood, my daughter. And today, she becomes more than that." Regina stepped forward, trying to smile. "This is a misunderstanding, sir." Mr. Elwood raised his hand. "You're fired. You misused your power and spoke about my daughter like she was trash." Security moved toward Regina. She froze. Daniel tried to leave quietly. Mr. Elwood pointed at him. And him. Theft. Fraud. Dishonesty. Daniel's face turned white as guards blocked his way. The rest of the staff stood frozen, unsure of what would happen next. Mr. Elwood looked at them. "Some of you are good people. Some of you treated Sarah with kindness. Even when you didn't know who she was, you'll be rewarded." He turned to Sarah. "You saw the truth, and you acted. That's what leadership looks like." He stepped aside. Sarah took a breath and stepped up to the podium. She looked out at the same people who used to ignore her mop and torn shoes. Now they saw her differently. "I cleaned your floors," she said gently. "I picked up the mess you made, not just on the ground, but in this company." She held up her own badge. "Sarah Elwood, Executive Director. This isn't about revenge. It's about respect. For everyone, no matter their shoes." The room was silent. Some people cried quietly. Others clapped slowly, then louder. Sarah looked at Maya, the receptionist, and smiled. "People like you will help us rebuild this place." Mr. Elwood placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "I leave this company in her hands." And with that, the meeting was over, but the real change had just begun. Sarah didn't need to wear fancy clothes. She had something stronger: truth, courage, and a heart that never forgot how it felt to be unseen. The company had changed, but Sarah, she was still changing too. Every day she learned more, not just about business, but about people, about pain, about healing. She smiled more now. Not the forced smile of a girl hiding in silence, but the proud smile of a woman who had walked through fire and come out stronger. But even as success grew, there was one thing missing: her father. He had left again after handing her the company. No one knew where he went. Sarah kept working, kept building, kept remembering the lessons he'd given her, in actions, not just words. Until one day, a small package arrived at her desk. No name, just a note. "For Sarah, when she's ready." Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was an envelope. Thick, cream-colored paper, her name written in her father's careful handwriting. She took a deep breath and opened it. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then I know you've done something brave. You've stayed. You've led. And most importantly, you've stayed kind. I didn't choose to leave you alone in this company as a punishment. I chose it as a gift, because I knew, deep down, that the world would only see your light if you stood in the dark first. It hurt me to watch you mop those floors. I saw the security camera footage. I watched people throw trash at you. I wanted to stop it, but I didn't. Not because I didn't care, but because I believed in you more than I believed in my own comfort. You showed me something I had forgotten. That power without empathy is nothing. That leadership without listening is hollow. And now, you are leading in the way this company truly needs. You didn't come in shouting. You came in cleaning. And now, you've cleaned more than floors. You've cleaned hearts. You've cleaned habits. You've cleaned the culture. And you did it without becoming cold, without becoming cruel, without losing yourself. I am proud of you, not just as your father, but as a man who built something and saw you rebuild it even better. This company is yours now, not because of blood, but because of soul. Take care of it. Not like a queen rules a kingdom, but like a gardener tends a garden. You planted respect. You watered it with patience. And now, it blooms. I'll return when you no longer need me. And maybe we'll walk these halls together. Until then, keep going, and never forget who you were before they knew your name. With all my heart, Dad. Sarah wiped a tear from her cheek. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer, right next to the badge that said Janitor. Not to forget where she came from, but to remember exactly how far she'd come. Later that day, she called a meeting. Not in the conference hall, but outside, in the company garden. All employees were invited. No titles, no ranks, just people. She stood under the open sky and shared her father's letter. The crowd was silent. Some wept. Others stood with hands over their hearts. Then she said, "This company isn't about one leader. It's about all of us. From the mailroom to the top floor, we rise, together." People clapped. Some hugged. Others looked at her like they were seeing her for the first time. Not as a CEO, not as the daughter of a rich man, but as someone who earned their place with quiet strength. That night, as Sarah walked through the empty halls once more, she passed by the janitor's closet. The door was open. Inside, the mop still leaned against the wall. She smiled and left it there. A symbol, a story, a beginning. Because the girl with the mop, she had become the woman with a mission. And her story was just getting started. Months had passed since Sarah took full control of the company. The building was brighter now, not because of paint or lights, but because people walked in with hope. Staff no longer whispered in fear. They spoke openly. The break rooms echoed with laughter. New interns were greeted with respect, not rolled eyes. Sarah had kept her promise. She built a company where no one felt invisible. But one rainy morning, something familiar happened. A girl walked through the lobby wearing baggy clothes, torn sneakers, and holding a mop. No one knew her name. Some newer employees looked at her, unsure of what to say. Maya, the receptionist, smiled warmly. She had learned something from Sarah. She offered the girl a cup of coffee and said, "Welcome. Let me know if you need anything." The girl nodded, surprised. Sarah was watching from the top floor. She had noticed the new janitor too. But she didn't approach her. She waited. She watched, just like her father once did. Days passed. The janitor girl, her name was Alia, moved quietly through the building. She didn't speak much, but her eyes were sharp. She watched everything. Sarah smiled to herself. She saw something familiar in Alia. One afternoon, Alia sat outside alone, eating lunch in silence. Sarah walked over and sat beside her. "You don't talk much," she said kindly. Alia looked up, nervous. "I'm just here to clean. I don't want to bother anyone." Sarah leaned back and nodded. "I used to say the same thing." Alia frowned. But you're the CEO." "I wasn't always," Sarah said. "Once, I was just the janitor. Like you." Alia stared at her. She didn't believe it at first. But Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out a folded paper, her old ID badge. It said, "Sarah Malik, janitorial staff." Alia's eyes filled with tears. "But how?" she asked. Sarah looked out at the trees swaying gently in the wind. "I stayed quiet. I watched. I learned. And one day, I was ready to rise." She turned to Alia and smiled softly. "You don't have to speak loudly to be strong. Just know who you are. And never let this world make you small." Alia wiped her cheek. "No one's ever said that to me before." Sarah stood and gently placed a small notebook in Alia's hand. It was blank. But on the first page, Sarah had written one sentence. "Write everything you see. It matters." That evening, Alia stayed late. She wasn't just mopping anymore. She was watching. listening, learning, and from her seat at the top, Sarah felt peace. She didn't know what Alia would become. Maybe not as CEO, maybe not today. But she knew one thing. Every great leader starts by seeing what others ignore.